We're going to talk about voter suppression.
Yes, we are. Voter suppression, how we put it all in the context, the importance of the vote on all of the issues that matter to me. And I want to thank you, Reverend Dr. Wilson, for having me. I want to extend my thoughts and best wishes to Reverend Jackson, whom I've also worked with over the years. And I want to thank my ABA State and Local Government Chair, Eric Levine Powers, and our esteemed panel. I'm Cynthia Swan, and I am a member of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice Leadership Council, where I co-chair the Criminal Justice Committee and have co-chaired the Election, the Education, as well as the inaugural African American Affairs Committee. And I'm also a member of the State and Local Government Section, co-chairing the Voting Rights Committee. And so as we put all of those things together, and as we look to address the concerns of our communities of color broadly, and our Black and African American communities specifically, we must never lose focus of the need to protect and defend the vote. We must also remember to present from a nonpartisan race-based voting rights perspective, so as not to alienate any as we advocate for safe and secure elections. For each deficiency that our communities experience in social and human services, whether it's policing, healthcare, education, housing, environmental protections, public transportation, the courts, and so much more, we must bring about a realization that our vote is our voice. And if we are to experience improvements and enforcements in any of these areas, then we must do our part and vote. I am personally of the belief that if we are to have our communities to become more engaged, we must empower them by educating and informing them on the importance of their vote. It must be believed that it is an absolute responsibility to register and to vote if, in fact, we are ever going to improve upon the issues that affect our daily lives.
So let's talk about voter suppression. I know 43 states have introduced some form of legislation to suppress the vote. Can you share a little bit of that information? What is the ABA doing about it?
We are experiencing a significant uptick in voter suppression efforts, especially as the 2018 and 2020 elections saw an unprecedented amount of voter participation, especially from our communities of color. Black communities registered and voted in huge numbers. And so we're finding states like Georgia, Florida, Texas, and others, Arizona, and we can go on, Wisconsin, Michigan, we can just continue, who are beginning to press legislation that will restrict the vote. They're doing it in ways of reducing ballot boxes, requiring identification, requiring other measures that are impossible in many instances to meet. We have Native American communities who have to travel 100 miles in order to vote. I mean, we have a lot of issues that are happening. And so the ABA, through our civil rights and social justice work, as well as through the work of state and local governments, have put together and are working with committees who are reaching into our communities, finding attorneys who are willing to work pro bono and become actively engaged in how do we begin to have the legislative perspective addressed and the litigation brought forward in cases that will make changes. We are constantly engaged in all of the community engagement, legal community meetings, whether it's with the Lawyers Committee, Leadership Conference, a number of others that are out there, and the minority groups, MALDEF. We are constantly actively engaged with these NAACP, obviously NAACP LDF, and it just goes on and on, the groups that we are connecting with through our members being members of these different collaborative efforts.
So in your final words, what would you say to the viewing audience about voter suppression and how we can address it?
We must engage our communities through civic engagement, education, and advocacy, organizing, voter mobilization, and litigation. If we are going to initiate change, our communities must understand their power, beginning at the state level and moving through our national agenda. Judges, states attorneys, prosecutors, sheriffs, voting commissions, et cetera, they all have power, and we have the power in our vote. We must increase voter participation among people in historically underrepresented communities in selected states, actually in all states. We must remove barriers to voting and promote positive changes to voting laws and election administration through public education, organizing, and litigation. And we must deepen alignment, coordination, and planning across national and state litigation, voting rights, and civic engagement organizations. organizations. In states that increase voter participation rates in historically underrepresented communities, we've seen salient efforts on issues of policing, healthcare, education, housing, through year-round advocacy around election protection and identifying and addressing voter suppression. We need to continue organizing in leadership development, voter mobilization. But we have to first and foremost, I think, always remember that election protection is year-round. We tend to move up on this particular issue when elections are coming and fall back off of it once the election is over. And if we don't make election protection a year-round effort, then we are not going to be able to be successful in protecting these other issues that we're concerned about.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the insight, and hopefully you will join us at this year's convention in June, because we're going to get into this in greater depth and greater detail. We really appreciate the work that you do with the American Bar Association and as well with the National Bar Association. Thank you, thank you, thank you.